The lake was still that morning, the surface a perfect mirror for the clouds drifting above. But on the far shore, a white shape moved awkwardly along the bank. It was a swan, but not the graceful, gliding kind one would expect. This swan limped, its wings dragging low, the left one bent at an unnatural angle. Her name, though no one had given it to her yet, was Lyra. Once, she had soared in the open sky with her flock, chasing the horizon, the wind cradling her feathers. But weeks ago, during a sudden storm, she had been struck by a strong gust mid-flight and crashed into the reeds. Her flock, pressed by instinct to migrate, had left without her. Alone and grounded, Lyra had hidden among the cattails, surviving on whatever small fish or weeds she could find. But winter was coming, and a swan that couldn't fly had little chance of making it through the cold months. It was on a crisp, pale morning that Elias, a fisherman in his 60s, spotted her, his small wooden boat cut through the lake, heading toward his usual fishing spot. He noticed the swan at once, her feathers disheveled, her movements slow and painful. He stopped paddling. "Well, now, you look like you've had a rough time," he murmured. Lyra froze, unsure whether to trust this human. But Elias didn't come closer right away. He simply set down a piece of bread on the bank and stepped back into his boat. The next day, he came again. More bread. Ate. This time, Lyra ate it, while he watched from a respectful distance. And the day after that, he came with a small bucket of fresh fish and a soft wool blanket. By the end of the week, Elias sat quietly beside her, his hands moving slowly, letting her grow used to his presence. Eventually, he noticed the damage her wing was not broken beyond repair, but it was strained and weak, feathers missing from the impact. "This is going to take time, girl," he said, "but we'll get you flying again." Elias carried her gently to his small boathouse by the edge of the lake. There he built a safe pen lined with straw. Every morning he brought her fresh food. Every afternoon he cleaned her feathers and checked her wing, speaking in a voice so calm it seemed to soothe the air itself. At first, Lyra resisted. She had never been confined before, and she didn't understand that the fisherman's care was meant to help. But as days turned into weeks, she began to trust him. She learned that his hands never hurt, that his voice carried no threat, and that his eyes were kind. Winter's snow began to blanket the lake's edges, and still, Elias worked patiently. Sometimes he would row her out onto the lake and let her glide on the water, the gentle motion strengthening her muscles without strain. One morning, after months of care, Elias opened the pen door. "Come on," he said. "Let's see how you're doing." They walked to the frozen shore, where the sun had begun to melt a patch of open water. Lyra stepped forward, wings twitching. She spread them, still uneven, but stronger now. Elias watched, hardly daring to breathe. Lyra flapped once, twice, and then, with a sudden push of her legs, she rose a few feet above the ground. She circled awkwardly, wobbling, before landing again. Elias laughed, a sound that carried across the quiet lake. "That's it. You'll be back in the sky before you know it." Over the next weeks, Lyra practiced every day. Short bursts became longer flights. Her landings grew smoother. She began to skim low over the water, feeling the cold spray against her chest. And then came the day when she stood at the edge of the shore, watching a small flock of swans circle overhead. She looked back at Elias. He stood there in his thick coat, smiling but with eyes glistening. "You're ready," he said softly. "Go on." Lyra stretched her wings wide. The wind caught them, lifting her higher and higher until the lake shrank beneath her. She circled once above the fisherman, dipping her head in a silent farewell, before turning toward the open horizon. Elias watched until she disappeared into the clouds. Then he picked up his fishing gear and walked back to his boat, the lake shimmering with the light of freedom. Some nights in early spring, he would look up to see a lone swan circling above his home. He liked to believe it was Lyra, coming back to say hello.